What's going on, guys? It's Nick from Budget Bill Garage, and we are back in the shop, this time with the Mustang. We just recently picked this thing up. It was a 1,000-mile road trip, and now she is back, and we are ready to work on it. Two things right away. First, I'm going to need all your best Ford jokes in the comments. I want to see them, I want to read them, I want to laugh. And two, this is the first car, the only car I own right now with a full grill intact. It looks pretty awesome. I was thinking about taking it out, but it really is too good. It's gonna stay. Overall, this car looks too good to be in here, but that's all right. We're gonna get it running now. Couple of things I've done off camera. I went ahead and did the oil change. I replaced the fuel filter, and honestly, that's really about it. I know the fuel filter's already all gunked up, turned into a fish tank right when I cranked the engine over. The gas tank, it had no gas cap on when we picked it up, so it's got years of dust and dirt and sediment and wind in it. So at this point, it needs to either be cleaned out or replaced. And honestly, since gas tanks are so cheap, we're gonna go ahead and replace it. Other than that, I did pull the carb off. I did clean the carb. I didn't put the rebuild kit in it because I want to get it all flowing, make sure all the fuel is good before I did. If fuel is bad, we'll replace it, and then I'll throw the carb in and we'll dial that in. Goals for today: get the tank in, get the car started, hopefully take it around the block at least. So yeah, let's get to it. Alright, so I was lucky enough to receive a message from the guy that actually put this engine in this car. On the last episode, I said that this was a radiator out of the inline 6 model. He actually told me that this was, actually, it's a V8 radiator out of a 63 Falcon 260 V8. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. I thought it was cool to hear from him. I think it's really cool anytime you can contact somebody who's done a bunch of work to a car you ended up. That's pretty awesome. It's a cool radiator, but honestly, we're going to go with like a 24-inch radiator and fill up this whole thing, and it's going to be awesome with a cool fan shroud. And we're going to make this thing stay cool in LA traffic because we're going to drive this thing everywhere. The other thing, so right when we started cranking this thing to get fuel, this thing filled up like a fish tank. Tons of sediment, all this wonderful sand, and all kinds of nastiness. It was an awesome green color because California gas breaks down pretty quickly. After about 6 months, it starts to get gross. It's got a bunch of nasty stuff, ethanol and other things in it that make it awful. When I pulled the carb off and cleaned it, I'm sure you'll be able to see it in some of this footage. Like the floats were just coated green and everything was nasty, kind of slimy, but the carb's clean for now. We'll rebuild it later. We just want this thing to fire up on some clean fuel, hear it run. One other thing is I wasn't making any oil pressure, which worried me, but then I found that. And now I know I am not making any oil pressure. So, not tonight, but soon, we're gonna have to go ahead and replace that oil pressure line. Probably with something copper, because the plastic stuff gets brittle and old from the heat. So I imagine somebody burnt through it, probably driving it, got an oil leak, and what they did is taped it up and crimped it up and then burnt the end of it so it wouldn't leak any more oil. I prefer to have the gauges though. There's no reason to not have an oil pressure gauge, so we're gonna make something work soon. But for now, I think we should go ahead and tear that gas tank out. So, we flip this thing around. In the Mustangs, unlike General Motors, a lot of Dodges and everything, the gas tank isn't under the trunk, the gas tank is the trunk. So it's a lot easier, to be honest, to pull it out. It comes out from in here. But we got a bunch of stuff in here. Luckily, we got all this. Turns out this bad boy was only $67 total due. This is what, 2011? That's pretty cool. So yeah, we got that. Also the top of a Sibian machine. I guess this guy liked to party. Awesome CDs. Let's see. Some Doobie Brothers. I don't know what this is. Sweet Home Alabama soundtrack. Coyote Ugly soundtrack. This is good stuff, dude. You saved this. There is a drain on Mustangs. If you have a factory tank, there's a drain on them usually, like almost always. So we'll drain it from the bottom, we'll pull it out, put the new one in, pump any gross fluid out of the lines really quick, and then hopefully this thing will just fire right up. We'll see though, right? That's cool. I didn't think it would actually come off, to be honest. It's cold. If that's hot and you spray a bunch of hot metal fuel. Alright, so that's the drain plug to the tank. As you can see, we got it flowing. It's nice and green. It smells wonderful. It does not smell good. It doesn't smell like gas, but you can see some of the nastiness. Alright, so you can see how nasty all this wonderful buildup is on this drain plug. I assure you it's much worse in person than it is on camera. You guys will be happy to know this is not made in China. It's from an American company, although it is actually made in Canada. It's made with their metal. One time I was taking one of these out of the box just like I was, and I was holding it like this, and it slipped, and it just gave me this awesome cut across all of my fingers. Never
is it just sheet metal or what?
Yeah, because it's just sheet metal. Yeah, so like I was saying, this whole thing is the actual. Look right there, made in Canada. That's awesome. I'd rather it say made in Canada than it can't be made in America. Yeah, so this whole thing is just held in. They actually run a bead of like.
Gasket.
Yeah, it's RTV essentially. But Ford used to do them in these cool like strips, so you lay the strips in on the trunk on the assembly line, and then they would just put this on there and it would like squish together. It was pretty cool actually. This is where the fuel pickup goes. This is the lock ring for it. And I got one of those too.
Smart.
Oh, and here's a better view of that drain plug we pulled. This thing wasn't perfectly clean when we dumped it in there, but it was a pretty clean pan, to be honest. That's all nasty stuff that's coming out of the tank. If you have a more rare car than the Mustang, it could be kind of hard to replace the gas tank. Honestly, that gas tank was cheap. It was readily available, and it's a perfect reproduction. But, like I said, if you have a more rare car and it's hard to get something like that, they make chemicals to clean this out. If it's not coated with rust, you're not in a place where it's totally destroyed, you can buy these chemicals. They're like pretty cheap. You're around like $20, I think, last time I bought one. And you put it in, swish it around, let it sit, and dump it out. And you could save your gas tank. You're not necessarily immediately buying one. But we had the ability to do it, so we did. We're gonna get rid of this. We're gonna pull that one out. We're gonna pour new gas in the new tank. So normally, right here, there is 4 on this side. This one is on the other way. That's usually what holds on your gas cap, if it's got a little cord that's holding it on. So these guys just pull right off. On these, I don't usually like to use like an impact. I don't like to use a drill on these because at the end of the day, they are just self-tapping sheet metal screws. You don't want to widen these holes because you'll have to keep stepping up to bigger ones. In the trunk, it's not that big of a deal. Nobody can see them. If you need a bigger bolt, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's just, I pull these off with like just a regular nut driver. A lot of times I need to replace this. It'll be all corroded and cracked and hardened and gross. We're gonna do that too because I got one. This is just like a silicone joiner. So this is just like a galvanized steel pipe, and this is like a silicone joiner. Why is that word so hard right now?
Joiner or jointer?
Joiner.
Joiner. Yeah,
so all it does is connect these two, and they can be gross sometimes. And I wonder if someone's already replaced this one because this is not the same as this. It's almost as if this is an old car and it's been on here for a while. This guy slides out just like that. If you're pulling on this thing and it's not coming up, like I was saying earlier, they do silicone these things in. As long as you know you've got all the bolts out, you can just slide a jack under it, crank it up a bit, it'll pop that silicone up. If it doesn't want to come freely, fairly easily, don't go too rough on it. You don't want to bend any of the lips or anything where this thing mounts, but a jack under it usually works pretty much every time. Yep, that's all it is right here. So it just plugs in. That's it right there. This is your fuel sender unit. This is connected to your gas gauge. It measures ohms is what it does.
Interesting.
Yeah, so before we put in the sender, I'll show you how to measure the ohms. You hear it coming. See, don't push too hard because you don't want to damage this when you do it. So when you're prying, just kind of give it a little. Here, it wants to come. Like I said, that works every time. 60% of the time, it works all the time.
There we go.
That's out. A little bit left in there. Cool. Alright, so when you've hit this thing with the wire wheel to get all that awesome stuff off, if you did it that way and you took anything down to bare metal, you need to paint it or primer it or something. I like self-etching primers. This one's from Summit Racing. It's weld through. It's what I had lying around, and honestly it's like $3 a can or $4 a can. I always have this in gray and in black lying around like everywhere. So you're not looking for perfection, you're not trying to paint and make it nice, you just want to coat it nice and thick and let it sit for like 15 minutes before you throw that back in there. If you took it down to bare metal, hit it with something. We had just a bit of surface rust right here, and as you can see it all came off kind of nicely, but that is bare metal, so we're not, like I said, you can lay it on pretty good. This stuff is wonderful, I use it for everything. Bare metal will rust. Your paint, I mean even grease and oil at the end of the day, is a barrier between the metal and, like, you know, your atmospheric nastiness, the salt that's in the air and everything else. Metal will corrode pretty quickly if it's bare, especially if it's clean and bare. So when you do what we just did, you've cleaned everything, just spray it with something. Black spray paint's fine. Anything you got lying around spray paint wise is usually fine. We'll let that dry for a bit. So this is your fuel sending unit. This guy right here gets all gross and nasty, which is why we're replacing ours, because it's sitting there. But the way your fuel gauge works is this right here. As you fill it with fuel, this creeps up, that's full, that's empty. Anytime you're installing one of these, it's a good idea to check it. The way you check it is you get a multimeter, set it to ohms. This guy. This is where you're hooking up your positive cable right here, just touching into this. This is the wire going directly to your fuel gauge. So hold it just like that. This just to the body. What I've done here is balance this guy on the desk. Anywhere like 8 to 15-ish is usually empty, like 8 to 12. And so as you go full, it should read up over 70 ohms. There you go, so that's full. So this thing works. That way, if your gas gauge doesn't work, you've eliminated this problem. You know, this is not why it doesn't work. This is the bottom of the tank right here. We have the tank flipped over. So that's your empty reading. So you want it, so this is up against this part, up against the bottom, okay? When it's at full droop, you want it up against the bottom. When you're inserting your fuel sending unit, in this particular tank, it'll only go one way. Once you put it in, let's see, like you can't rotate it all the way, you'll hit it. So it's like, it's kind of for it. So now I'm hitting the top. That's the only way it can go. All right, so here's our gas tank. Currently, it's upside down, so this is the bottom. You're gonna have this rubber O-ring. Usually the gas tank will come one, and the locking ring, and this will come with one too. You only need one. Keep the other one. But you can see right here, there is a groove. You see that? So you want to set this guy in the groove, just loosely like that. It's not a big deal if it falls out right now. Just once that's in there, then you install your sending unit. Make sure it stays in the groove now. Now it needs to stay in the groove. Set that guy on it. See these here? These are your stoppers. So you just rotate this guy. It's alright to hit it when it's empty with a hammer and a screwdriver, but if it's got any gas in it at all, you need a brass punch. That way it doesn't spark, it doesn't blow up, doesn't kill you. That's it right there. You see that tab right into that one? Right there. That tab locks in all spots. Yep, that's really it. Your gas tank's ready to go in. This here is an awesome silicone strips. This is how they did it in the factory. Instead of laying a big old caulking bead like we normally would do. I bought this in a kit. It was super awesome because it was on sale, which is why I bought it. Instead of just running a caulk bead of RTV across it. But it's really cool actually. So you lay one of these all the way around on the inside of the holes in the trunk, which I'll show you. And when you set this thing on there, it squishes it down and seals. It's really awesome actually. I really like it. So all I'm trying to do is get all the nasty dust off and out of the place so we can lay this stuff in. You don't have to be too precise with it. Just kind of decide where you want to be. I'd rather have it too long so I can only have to do one cut. Oh dude, it comes in strips. That's amazing. I had no idea. I don't even have to cut it. Oh, that's good.
Alright, cool.
I've never used this before. I'm pumped. That was really cool. Look at that. That's just the right side. Yeah, I bought the gas tank and like it came with the gas tank, it came with the sending unit, came with this stuff, it even came with new screws.
Wow.
Which I thought was really cool.
For 20 bucks?
Yeah. You just set this in on the inside of the bolts. It's alright if it's not like perfectly down like that. Once you set the tank in there, it won't matter. It'll squish. We're not going to do that much of it. I wonder if this thing was replaced once before because it was really hard to get out. And it looked like there was a lot more than just this line. Make sure not to crush that when we put the tank back in. This just helps it from like not rattling too. You know what I always do for rattles? The soft side of Velcro. Like when I put in a dash,
Yeah.
I'll take the soft side and ditch the other side, of course, and I'll just put little tiny little squares of it on the metal piece, and then everything just fits so much tighter and doesn't vibrate. Like I know it would have been just as easy to run the bead, but like I'm still pumped. All right, we are ready to do this. There we go, we're almost perfectly lined up. Oh gee, you can already feel it being sticky too, that's amazing. I'm gonna start using this stuff on everything. So this came in the kit. This word right here, it says Concode, that means concourse restoration. That means this is exactly what would have come on the car when the car left the showroom floor. This is like stuff judges look for when they're trying to judge your car. Usually I don't buy the concourse stuff because it's like super expensive, but this came in the kit and the kit was not expensive, so hey, I'm pumped on it. Anytime I'm putting bolts that are self-tapping, like sheet metal screws or something like this, I try not to use the drill if the hole is already there. They get looser and looser over time, and the more times you do it, the less they grab. So it takes longer, but I like to use a nut driver or a socket or something whenever I can. Got this awesome cork gasket. This thing slides in here. You gotta give it a little bit because it does have a lip, which sucks, but there we go. Everybody in the comments too was like, make it a cool cruiser, and so hey, here we are. I gotta get this one started while I hold it. Alright, we're good. We're done. Just trying to get out some of that sediment that we got in there. Because this is a new fuel filter. There we go. That's good. That's much better. Let's do that again now. Yeah, it looks a lot better. This is the gas that we're pumping out of the lines. It's pretty disgusting. It's not even good enough to light off. You can see right here, we just cleaned that filter too. So we're gonna clean it one more time. What we did is we disconnected the hose and we used the starter to crank the engine over enough to like pump all that fuel out until we got clean fuel going. So I'm gonna try and clean this filter out one more time. We'll hook it back up and it should fire right up. All right, so it's the end of the night. We got the tank in. We got all the gunky nastiness out of it. We cranked it for a while. You saw how bad it was. Everything that was pulling out of the lines was terrible. Honestly, this thing's gonna light right off. We've already sprayed it with a bit of starting fluid, and it coughed and it choked and it lit off, and then we've already ran it. It's already sat there, it already idles, and to be honest, once we got the bad gas out of there, it's fine. I'll fire it up right now and you'll see it. Alright, like I said, we're already good. We knew it would fire. We had it fired before we loaded it on the trailer. We dumped about a quart of ATF fluid into it, and we're going to take it for a drive. So, if you liked the episode, if you like the car, drop a comment, like, subscribe, and check out the next video on it when we start upgrading stuff. Catch you guys later.